Okay, we are going to review Unit 1, Ecosystems, and we are going to get ready for this exam. Here we go. Okay, so resources are in limited supply, and what resources are available are going to tell us what the biome is like. There's a bunch of species, floras and faunas in these biomes, and the way they react or interact with each other um, kind of affects what happens in the ecosystem or in that biome. So over here on our chart, we've got competition. Competition is when both species could be harmed from what they're doing to each other. Another interaction is either parasitism or predation, where one gets a benefit and the other one is harmed. And we've seen that happen, and it affects the populations. If there's a lot of the prey, then there's going to be a lot of the predator too. And then when the prey dies out, then the predator will die out as well. Mutualism is when there's a benefit for both of the organisms. And then commensalism is when one gets a benefit and the other one is unaffected. It doesn't really matter. But all of these are interactions that are important, and they kind of drive how an ecosystem works. And this can happen within one species or between several species. One of the solutions that nature has is to share the resources. And so that could be a solution for a lot of the ways biomes can survive and maintain all of the resources to keep species going. So resource partitioning is a way for nature to share and stay sustainable. So again, they could share by where they use the resource. They could share by when they use the resource, and it helps to lessen the competition if they're not competing for the same thing at the same time. And that is something humans should learn from nature too. Okay, these terrestrial biomes, so on land, biomes are determined by lots of things. The main thing is the climate, and what determines climate is precipitation and temperature. And those kind of drive the rest of what's going on in the biome. So climate, temp, and precipitation. Geography, mountains are going to affect temperature and precipitation. Valleys will affect temperature and precipitation. So this is a direct relationship. Latitude, where it is on the globe. Middle, hot and moist. After that, dry deserts. After that, forests, and then cold deserts. So the latitude affects the climate. The altitude also affects the climate. Higher up, colder. Lower down, warmer. And then what nutrients are there? Nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon, water. That's all going to affect how a biome kind of turns out, and that affects the quality of the soil. Soil is affected by temperature, moisture, texture, a whole bunch of different things. So if we look over here, a normal forest has pretty good soil. This is a coniferous forest. Grassland has great soil with nutrients. The tropical rainforest does not. Like how not dark this is, because all these roots, there's so much plant life in here, it gets sucked right up and all the nutrients go up to the plants. And my big fat head is blocking the desert, but there's no nutrients in the soil there because it's dry. There's no water to cycle it, and so it's pretty barren and there's nothing there. Okay, so the other thing that helps drive all of this is wind. This Hadley cell right here is very important, and that's why we have a warm, moist tropical rainforest. It's why we have hot, dry deserts next, and then we have cooler forests after that, and then cold deserts on the top and the bottom. And you can see that as we go up the altitude. Wind works by a process called convection, where hot air goes up and cool air goes down, and it moves in a cycle. And it literally is moving the air, and the oceans work the same way, so that the wind and air drive, and the currents in the ocean drive the temperature and the precipitation amounts, and that influences the climate. Another little microclimate thing happens in small areas is this thing called the rain shadow effect. And that is the idea that whether clouds come up the mountain, the moisture condenses, turns into clouds. The clouds drop the water and precipitation, the rain. So on the backside, you get a desert because all of the moisture came out on the front side. And that's what's going on. This is a cool view here because you can see that altitude affects the biome. So the deserts are lower, the forests are kind of in the middle. Here's the chaparral, that's us. And then as you go up, you get different kinds of forests. All right, water biomes, there's two. There's saltwater and freshwater. But all these aquatic biomes, you should know the examples of them. So the ocean, coral reefs, mangroves, seagrass, intertidal, that's all in the saltwater realm. Lakes, ponds, rivers, glaciers, those are in the freshwater side of things. But we have a kind of middle ground with estuaries, swamps, and marshes. They're in what's called brackish water, which is kind of half salt, half fresh. All of these aquatic biomes are dependent on the salinity levels, how deep they are or how shallow they are, or light is what that really means. How many particles are in the water, how turbid is it, what nutrients are available, and what's the temperature like, because organisms can't adjust quickly to hot and cold extremes, especially aquatic ones. Okay, we talked about the carbon cycle. Hopefully you understand there's a long-term carbon cycle, which is right here. When things die, they go into the ground and they're supposed to stay in the ground. That happens over in the ocean as well. And then short term, we have plants doing photosynthesis, people breathing, animals breathing, doing respiration, putting carbon dioxide back into the air. And so those things are part of the short term. Over time, we have this coal sitting in here, and if we put up a factory and we drill and mine this coal out, and then we burn it, use it, put it back into the atmosphere, we have a lot of carbon dioxide, more than we should. And then we have this problem of global warming because of because of the sun. Hold on, let me get a sun color here. So the sun is, the sun is sending down its rays, and the rays are trying to escape back into space, but they're getting blocked by these particles, boop, and so they're going to go back into our atmosphere instead of escape, and that's what's warming the planet, and then we're going to have some climate change happening, and that will affect the ecosystems and the biomes as well. Okay, so the nitrogen cycle, I know this is the confusing one, but basically there's a bunch of nitrogen gas in the atmosphere and we can't use it. So we have to fix it to turn it into something we can use. So either lightning does it or bacteria does it. And once they fix it, they turn it into this ammonium. And then nitrogen nitrification has to happen by the help of more bacteria, and they turn it into something that plants can use, either nitrites or nitrates, and that's something the plant can take up in its roots, and that is called assimilation. Then the plant either is eaten or it dies, or the animal that ate it dies, and so more bacteria will decompose it back into these things, mineralization, back to ammonium, and then other bacteria, there's all these bacteria, will denitrify it and send it back up into the atmosphere. And that just keeps cycling over and over and over again. So nitrogen's important. It's a nutrient. It goes into our protein synthesis. It helps us to create proteins and do functions in our body. And if there's too much of it, it can lead to a condition in the water called eutrophication, but you don't have to know that yet. The phosphorus cycle is mostly in rock or ocean because it does not get cycled around in the atmosphere. Because of that, it goes really slow. And so these organisms die, they get in the soil or in the ocean, they sink down, and then they get cycled around in the rock cycle and come out in a volcano or through plate tectonics, but it takes a long time for that to happen. So usually it's a limiting factor for growth because there's not enough phosphorus to go around to help stuff grow in an unlimited way. And so we have to realize phosphorus is in our bones, it's in our DNA, that sugar phosphate backbone. It's part of our protein synthesis as well. And so it's very, very necessary for life, but it is also a limiting factor for how much life can be out there population-wise. All right, the water cycle, again, only the sun drives that. We need the sun to drive the water cycle to, if it's not there, water freezes. If it is there, it thaws out. If it's super hot, it turns into a gas and evaporates away. The ocean is our main reservoir for water, but we also have ice caps and groundwater and the aquifer, like what's under Anaheim, underground storage for fresh water. And it just cycles. It percolates down into the soil, it runs off into the ocean, it evaporates, it turns into a cloud from condensation, and it precipitates down again, and this just happens over and over and over. We only have the water that we have. We don't import it from space. We don't have a way to create more water. It's all we got. So it's always cycling and moving. And water is what drives carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus as well. So without the water moving all this stuff, we don't have any of these cycles working for us, and life cannot happen. All right, net primary productivity is how much photosynthesis is happening. And it's how we measure how much energy is available. So the gross primary productivity is the total rate of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. The net primary productivity is how much can get passed on to the next trophic level. And remember our little equation here. And remember the unit. So it's energy, calories, over area, meters squared, over time. So if I do another fraction here, it really comes back up here. So time over a year. And so it's kind of a weird unit. So pay attention to that when you're looking at different things. Okay, so NPP is important because of what does and doesn't do a lot of the photosynthesizing. So these biomes up here have lots of plants to do photosynthesis. There's a lot of biodiversity going on. And so we get a high level of NPP. Now, down here in the desert, there's not a lot of plants, there's not a lot of water, there's not a lot of diversity, so we have lower NPP. And students usually get stuck right here at the ocean because there's lots of photosynthesis happening for the plankton. They're doing tons of photosynthesizing, but since the ocean's so huge, that area factor is why it has low NPP. So if I have like a number over a really big number, that ends up being a very small number. And because this area is so large, oceans have a very low NPP. Okay, trophic levels. So trophic means feeder. And so how are organisms feeding themselves in these biomes? So ecosystems start with high quality of energy here, and as you go up the trophic level, it gets to a lower quality of energy. And so matter has to transfer through these biogeochemical cycles, again, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the carbon, the water, and we're trying to conserve all this matter. We can't bring in new matter, we can't get rid of matter. Matter can't be created or destroyed, if you've heard that before. So autotrophs make their own food, they produce it. That's the plants that are doing the photosynthesis. Consumers eat it, And so you could be a primary consumer and eat the plant. You could be a secondary consumer and eat the primary consumer, or a tertiary consumer that eats the secondary consumer. And that brings us to our 10% rule. So going up our pyramid, 90% of the energy going from level to level is lost as heat, burning the calories, living the life, the respiration, if you will. So when things are consumed, only 10% of the total energy is passed on to the next trophic level. So why should we eat at a lower trophic level? We would get better or higher, higher quality energy. And it would use less resources to eat at a lower trophic level, so it would be more sustainable. Okay, so the food chain kind of shows what eats what, so that's very much aligned with the trophic levels. And the food web is just a more complicated trophic level indication because lots of things eat lots of different things. So it shows what level is being eaten by and what's consuming and what's being consumed. And then we have the idea of the feedback loop. So we have this condition, and if we keep adding to the condition and making it happen more and more, then it's a positive feedback loop. But if we have a condition and we have things happen that reverse it, then it's a negative feedback loop. I think that's pretty much what we need to know for the test. So good luck, and you can do it.